Hello and welcome to a new year with Colonial Outcasts. It is 2025, and as I've been saying, if you love 2024, you're absolutely going to love 2025, and boy, are we starting out with a bang. Literally, you are currently listening to a copyright-free Terminator Skynet-themed knockoff track because that is where this is going, y'all. George Orwell's 1984 warned of a future where Big Brother watches every move. Today, modern technology is making that vision a reality. And you know what? I don't like how it's getting into like symphonic douche metal, so we're just gonna turn that knockoff version off.
Douche
Again,
metal?
yes. Yeah,
That's a new
symphonic
category.
metals. It's really not my jam. So, anyways, but it's too early in the episode to get sidetracked.
Real quick. What's your jam? Is it the Green Day? That's like metal, right?
Yes, Mark. Green Day, Nickelback, Creed, all the best metal bands. So
My
okay,
Chemical Romance.
yeah. Okay, so today, modern technology is making George Orwell's 1984 vision a reality. And Oracle founder Larry Ellison, his name you're going to want to know because he's going to really affect your life in the near future. He already has been. Larry Ellison, the world's second richest person, sees a growing opportunity for his company, Oracle, which we're going to talk about later, to help authorities analyze real-time data from millions of surveillance cameras. Larry Ellison, predicts the rise of the modern surveillance state where, in his words, quote, citizens will be on their best behavior once everything's managed by AI surveillance programs. So that's fun. With the advent of killer drones and robot dogs, this is going to be fun in the most sarcastic way possible. All this surveillance tech and these homicidal robots currently being field tested in Gaza and Ukraine will, through imperial feedback, boomerang back onto us, the citizens of the colonial imperialist empire thing that we've got going on here in America and the larger West, our client states. But this dystopic future isn't yet one of a rogue AI like Skynet taking over the launch codes and killing us all. Our human overlords are perfectly capable of nuclear mutual annihilation and creating a Terminator which they can control against and mobilize against unruly citizens. Well, that's our little intro. My name is Greg Stoker, and we're here with Mark Wayne. It's a founder episode, just us, and boy, are we already exhausted by the BS. How you doing, man? Oh, great! You muted your mic because you were coughing, just like everybody else.
I'm sorry. No, I'm great, dude. Good to kick off the new year, hanging out with you and Assad from Habibi House last night. That's pretty fun in LA, in my neck of the woods.
Yeah, I'm just on the West Coast. Not my favorite coast, but here we are. It was great. Yeah, it was great hanging out during the new year, or talking and not talking. So today we are going to be talking, and because this is not a podcast of silence, about domestic terrorism and how everything is just not adding up at all with regards to the New Orleans car attack and the Las Vegas Cybertruck car bomb. And people are really, politicians and three-letter agencies and the police state are really going to capitalize on this to get more funding, ratchet down on laws, loosen regulations on surveillance, stuff like that. And I just want to say, before we get into all of that, congrats to Elon Musk for creating a vehicle so bad and stupid that people couldn't at first decide if it was an act of terrorism or it just exploded on its own, being a dumbass Cybertruck. So good job. Thanks, Tesla. But first, when it comes to mass hysteria and government and media manipulation, what happened to the New Jersey orbs? Okay, what happened to the drones? That just kind of fizzled out, huh?
Yeah, I guess so. I think the internet pretty much handled it. The internet handled that by just saying that it's just a distraction. So I don't think it had the effect on the population they had hoped, but I don't think they care anymore if it had the effect they wanted. They're still probably going to push for use it as a cudgel for more regulations on surveying our lives and, taking us into McCarthyan period, Cold War vibes, Red Scare type of vibes. So that's what I think it. That's how I see it. The whole thing, regardless
like,
of what the hell it was.
Where do you think it came from? Where do you think it was like manufactured from?
The drones that appeared in New Jersey.
Yeah, which were mostly helicopters.
Most of them were helicopters, but I guess the credible reports were talking about how when law enforcement was trying to, scan these objects in the sky, they didn't have any heat signature, which supposedly raised alarm bells with authorities saying that which made them bigger of a threat, because usually even with drones, you're able to detect a heat signature from the motor. And these things didn't have a heat signature, so they're freaking out, saying this is some crazy new technology, and this is very disturbing. So, that was kind of the rhetoric coming from law enforcement and federal agencies, was their lack of heat signature. So, I don't know. Who knows? Well, I mean, you have to what we have to understand is that wherever civilian technology is, you have to just add on at least 20 years onto military technology. So we have no idea where the U.S. government is right now with their technology when it comes to drones, submarines, you name it. They're far beyond what we know about. You can't just pick up a popular science magazine and expect to be updated with the latest military technology. It doesn't work that way.
And there was a lot of talk about like dirty bombs and an Iranian mothership drone platform that was launched a month ago, and it was just, people were just like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. And if you believe in the deep state and conspiracy theories, which I'm not, again, the biggest fan of those, it just seems like this drone thing and then these bombings, it's just, whether or not they're actually conspiracies, like they're definitely capitalizing on it. But before we get into that, I just want to relive the end of the year craze and commemorate it by playing my favorite social media take. Essentially, in the future, do not bring a drone to an orb fight.
I'm about to show you is a drone.
And this kind of just encapsulates how dumb I thought everything was, and how dumb I think everything is, and it's only going to get worse.
Drone flying into an orb, and then it disables the drone, and the drone falls out of the sky. The lady recording don't know how to record, like super boomer status, barely knows how to use a phone, but she caught the important stuff. Boom, here we go. So
it's literally not important.
This thing is zipping across the sky right here. Phoenix, Arizona, December 14th, dude. Watch. It's like, oh, snap. I'm a freaking drone. I see an orb. I'm a look how fast this thing goes. Check this out. So it comes up to it. It touches it. Drone doing what a drone does. Orb doing what an orb does. Boom. Dog. What? What are you kidding? What, dude? You know what I'm saying? This thing comes up to it. Do not bring a drone to an orb fight, dog. You know what I'm saying? Don't bring a freaking drone to an orb fight.
Bro.
What? You're cooked.
Totally, bro.
So I thought these things were out there sniffing out some freaking nuclear stuff, but now I'm thinking they were put out there to freaking chase down these orbs, or to distract us from these freaking orbs, dude.
But bro has a point though, man. He has a total point, dog. You can't bring a drone to the fucking orb fight. You're talking about high technology up in like the galaxies and stuff, man. You can't do it, bro. Speaking of freaking drones, though, this was very impressive out of Shanghai. I don't know if you saw the Shanghai New Year's celebrations.
Yeah, it was terrifying. The coordination of like all
it's terrifying. I believe it was 10,000 drones. That is insane, insanely terrifying. It's like perfect word, because that type of coordination, while it's nice and pretty for New Year's celebrations, knowing that our U.S. military has that capabilities, we are so freaking on another level of warfare if that's used against a civilian population, which it will be per the Imperial Boomerang theory. That shit's coming home. And if China has that, we have that. And that means that the civilian population has that as a threat. So,
Well, you know, if we didn't get distracted enough by the drones and the potential dirty bomb that Iran snuck into New Jersey through the port, but, you know, we've got something else, an ISIS inspired attack in New Orleans and a car bomb in Las Vegas, both acts committed by Army veterans, both who were stationed at one time at Fort Bragg, which to me is not notable at all. Since Fort Bragg is massive, but they did both use cars that they both rented off the Turo app, which allows private person to person rentals. I mean, it looks weird. You know, I'm not, you know, a conspiracy theory guy. But either way, the government is going to use these incidents to up the police budget and ratchet down the security state. And before we leave drones one last time, you see that they'll use any like any excuse or pretext to, you know, pass this kind of stuff. In all seriousness, the Biden administration did use the opportunity of drones to try and pass federal legislation that would address unmanned aircraft systems as the state deals with an ever-growing spate of drone sightings this last December. And the bill would have granted the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Justice more authority over the unmanned aircraft. It ended up fizzling out, I believe. But here's what Senator Rand Paul had to say about it mid last month.
The bill before us would grant law enforcement significant authority to intercept private electronic communications without consent. For example, the bill would allow the government to conduct dragnet surveillance of the phones innocent Americans traveling through U.S. airports as long as the government claims they are doing it to neutralize a drone. So in order to look at the information that might be coming to a drone, it may be that you capture all the information of everybody surrounding an airport or everybody who lives near an airport. Once you have all that data, what are the assurances that the government isn't looking at your data in addition to the data that may be related to flying the drone? This is not just about security. It's about unchecked government overreach.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, dragnet surveillance is a term that refers to the collection and analysis of information on a large group of people, just whoever's in the area, rather than those just suspected of criminal activity. You know,
an example of that would be the Stingray system. For those of you who don't know, a lot of protesters who have been active in protests in the past 4 years should be aware of the law enforcement, the technology that law enforcement uses called Stingray, in which they act as like a man in the middle between you and the cell phone tower. And that's an example of dragnet surveillance. They would just monitor anybody who's in the area, and that's how they track protesters, which is completely insane because they're expressing, their amendments, First Amendment rights. So, but Stingray became just normalized. It's become accepted. Oh yeah, law enforcement uses Stingray. And by the way, what do you think about Rand Paul?
I mean, I like some of his takes.
I will give him this. I respect him for his consistency when it comes to civil rights. He's very consistent. Regardless whether you love him or hate him, he is consistent. And that's one thing I do appreciate him. In fact, he's the only one out there in Washington that's actually kind of talking about that on a consistent basis.
Yeah. And look, again, I'm not a conspiracy guy because either way, the government is going to use these incidents, the drone mass hysteria craze, the purported ISIS-inspired attack, the Cybertruck bombing, to up the police budget and ratchet down on the security state. And no, it's notable that the New Orleans attack is considered by the mainstream media to be an act of terror, while the Vegas one is not. So let's compare reporting and government messaging on this because it will inform the rest of our discussion. Starting with Christopher Raya, FBI Deputy Assistant Director of the Counterterrorism Division. This is him flying after he flew down to New Orleans and spoke in front of the press. I believe this was yesterday. Yesterday being the 2nd.
Clear about this point. This was an act of terrorism. It was premeditated and an evil act. We do not assess at this point that anyone else involved in this attack except for Shamsa Din Jabbar. Investigators believe Jabbar picked up the rented F-150 in Houston, Texas on December 30th. He then drove from Houston to New Orleans on the evening of the 31st, and he posted several videos to an online platform proclaiming his support for ISIS. There were 5 videos posted on Jabbar's Facebook account, which are time-stamped beginning at 1:29 a.m. and the last at 3:02 a.m. In the first video, Jabbar explains he originally planned to harm his family and friends, but was concerned the news headlines would not focus on the, quote, war between the believers and the disbelievers. And
So he was eventually. So I want to make this point. Both of these guys are Army veterans, and they both seem very mentally unwell. So the fact that he was going to harm his family first, but then he wanted to make it about like an ISIS transnational jihad seems very sketch to me.
end quote. Additionally, he stated he had joined ISIS before this summer. He also provided a will and testament. On New Year's morning, Jabbar opened fire after ramming through a blocked-off area of Bourbon Street, used his truck as a weapon to run over the victims. We do not believe the public is in any danger around any of these locations. Evidence technicians will also be going over the F-150 truck Jabbar was driving. As you know, we recovered an ISIS flag from the back of the vehicle. FBI bomb.
We're going to discuss how sketch that flag is here in a second. Let's just let him finish the press statement.
Technicians also recovered 2 IEDs in coolers, one from the cross-section of Bourbon and Orleans Street, and the second at an intersection approximately 2 blocks away. There were multiple reports of other devices. Those reports turned out to be misinformation or not actual functioning devices. Those are the only 2 devices that we've been able to recover that were functional. Both devices were rendered safe on scene. We did obtain surveillance footage showing Jabbar placing the devices where they were found. Jabbar himself was born in the United States and is a U.S. military veteran. We are looking in everything in his life. While we have interviewed many people who know Jabbar, we still need to talk to others.
Okay, so this investigation is going to take a minute. First of all, I like how all the Republican politicians immediately were like, this is why we can't have porous borders. Thanks, Biden, for letting everybody into the country. And it's like both these guys are both American veterans.
Senator Randy Fine says Muslim terror has attacked the United States. Again, the blood is on the hands of those who refuse to acknowledge the worldwide Muslim #Muslim problem. It is high time to deal with this fundamentally broken and dangerous culture. So, of course, the Islamophobes are coming out of the woodworks. So it's interesting. What's interesting about this particular incident is that this is the competition of conspiracy theories that's going on. Right off the bat, before anybody knew anything, people were automatically going to his truck coming across the border. So Marjorie Taylor Greene says, shut down the border immediately. And then you have your like Zionists who are out there trying to play the Muslim angle. See, this is the problem. This is why we have to support Israel, because they're taking care of this problem. But then you have people who believe that ISIS and Al-Qaeda work with Israel and the CIA. So they're coming out and saying, well, if this guy was claiming to be working for ISIS, then technically he works for us. So technically this is a US-led conspiracy. So it's interesting to see these conspiracies clash with each other. And I think it's all backfiring at the US government, because either way, the US government is kind of like to blame. Yeah. So
the bottom line is, well, okay, so I just want to address the Islamic State is controlled by the CIA. So, I mean, it is funny. It's kind of suspicious how ISIS always shows up when the Iraqi government like demands that we disband our bases, or people demand we get out of Syria, not to mention news of ISIS activities within those Sahel states. I think like with the Ivory Coast just demanded France dismantle their bases and leave. The Sahel states that recently have moved to expel France. It is kind of crazy that ISIS needs to be combated wherever the US, France, and Israel want to operate, always with impeccable timing too. Based on my own experience, you can call me like naive, or, you can try to Fed jacket me for saying this, but it's more about like capitalizing. Imperialism is like, if you look at the British Raj, if you look at other colonial states, it's always about capitalizing on crises. So that's kind of how I've always viewed it. And with someone like Jelani in Syria, who's an ex-ISIS guy, then an ex-Al-Qaeda guy, it's not necessarily like in my personal ideology, my personal belief, and my worldview at this point, at this juncture in time, is if you want to go legit and stop being hunted as a terrorist, you become a Western asset. It doesn't mean like that we control the entire organization or whatever. That's just my personal take. But if you want to go legit and you want the political cover of the United States government, for your own sociopathic political ends, then going Western asset is how you go legit.
Yeah, I tend to take it a step further. I do. I mean, this is just me, and I respect your opinion. I see you and I hear you, but
Oh, thanks.
but yeah, no, I think that I think that they've been a CIA seeded asset from the beginning. I think, yes, they kind of try to blend an organic uprising amongst certain aspects of Al Qaeda, but I also think that they kind of like pounced on it and then seeded it and incubated it. That's what I think the ISIS is. I think that it is a CIA agenda to destabilize the Middle East, and like you said, you worded it perfectly, to give the U.S. empire a reason to be in the areas that they want to control for geostrategic regions or reasons and resources. So yeah, I tend to believe that it's like 70% a CIA operation with organic play going on that they allow to happen.
Yeah. But the performative effect is the same,
It's the same.
whether the CIA controls it or not, or whether this was just a really mentally disturbed veteran who just went off the deep end. The performative effect is going to be the same. The Islamophobia, the fear mongering, we need more police, we need more military interventions to combat Muslim terror and to crack down on immigrants with ICE. And it's going to be the same thing, whether or not it was engineered by the government or not. So I think we both agree. I think like no matter what conspiracy theory you have or don't have, we can all agree that's what's going to happen. So
yeah.
And so, a lot of these people within the state are like, hell yeah, I'm so glad this attack happened. We've been waiting for something like this. We've just been waiting.
Absolutely.
And so let's just talk about this Islamic State flag found at the scene. And we have an FBI tech taking a picture of it, but it's inverted on a cheap PVC flagpole. It's upside down on the flag.
Did the feds spell it right this time in Arabic, or you could make a typo?
I think a couple of our mutual acquaintances checked it. It's the correct Arabic, but here's the thing. It's upside down, not mirrored, not backwards, just upside down on the flagpole. And this is strange because the Islamic State flag bears the phrase, "There is no God but God," a declaration that even the least devout Muslim would recognize. And this is kind of like a Christian, like a devout, like fanatical Christian, being totally chill, like wearing an inverted cross, like an upside down exorcist Jesus cross, so
Yeah.
it's just friggin' weird. That's kind of an oversight for even a casual member of the Islamic State. You should know which way the flag goes.
Carl in the graphics department at the CIA can never get this shit right. That's his problem. He's always just clicking on shit and doesn't get prior approval from his higher ups before he just pushes out the flag like that. So this is just shows the incompetence of the feds, is that they can't even get the graphics correct when they're doing these things. So, that's what should be investigated with Congress, is why are they not getting these things correct before they plant evidence?
I think we should withhold funding until they can look at a picture of actual IS operatives with flags
and get it right next time
and just make it look the same.
Yeah.
But even if it wasn't a false flag fed plant, like, if it wasn't a Fed operation, I could definitely see it being a drop flag, like someone from the field office rushed over and just dumped a flag. But that also doesn't jive because this dude had previous videos where he expressed sympathy with the Islamic State. So I don't know what's going on. It's just so weird.
Well, okay, so this is getting into a much broader topic of the feds of the suspicion that the feds target mentally unstable individuals and irk
And
them on.
this guy was definitely mentally unstable.
Right. So we have historical precedent for the feds doing this to as far as inciting terrorist activities and extremism, where they're the ones incubating it just so that they can get an arrest. A lot of people have been speculating, are they doing this because they're trying to meet a quota, a budget quota, where they have X amount of money?
To justify their funding and appropriations.
Right. So, and that's very possible. We know that law enforcement has quotas to get arrests and get convictions, and they're given money to do so, and so that people can get their bonuses and get their holiday extra hours of vacation. I don't know. So we have a 2009. We have the Newburgh Four, in which 4 men were convicted of plotting to bomb synagogues in the Bronx and shoot down military airplanes. An FBI informant, Shahed Hussein, played a significant role in orchestrating the plot, leading to accusations of entrapment. Critics argue that the defendants were manipulated by the informant, who offered financial incentives and guided the planning. So that's an incident where they're using financial incentives to kind of stoke these things. The Fort Dix 5, 2007, where 6 individuals were accused of planning on an attack on Fort Dix military base in New Jersey. The FBI used informants to infiltrate the group, and there are claims that these informants encouraged and facilitated the plot. 5 of the men were convicted, but critics argue that the government's involvement constituted entrapment. And then you have Sami Osmakak case in 2012. Osmakak was convicted of attempting to use a weapon of mass destruction in Tampa, Florida. An FBI informant provided him with non-functional weapons and explosives. Defense attorneys claimed that Osmakak, who had mental health issues, was entrapped by the FBI's tactics. And then we get to an interesting one, which was I don't know if you remember this, the Michigan governor kidnapping plot in 2020. So several men were accused of plotting to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Defense attorneys argued that the FBI informants and undercover agents had entrapped the defendants by instigating and facilitating the entire conspiracy. The case has led to an ongoing debates about the extent of the FBI's involvement. But even before that, I mean, we go back to Fred Hampton. The FBI installed William O'Neill, who was arrested and threatened to be locked away for a long time unless he cooperated. He was actually given the assignment of trying to get Fred Hampton to go along with this plot of bombing City Hall and placing explosives and dynamite. So the FBI has a long history of trying to push these plots on citizens using whatever manipulative means necessary, whether it be financial or whatever. They've even used honey traps like prostitution to do so, and they just prey on people who are mentally unstable to get a plot incubated so that they can then do the arrest and have the big win. And in that case, it was to subvert the Black Panthers, which were a threat to capitalism in the United States. So this is a pattern that the feds do. So when I hear people saying, like criticizing conspiracy theorists, you can't blame conspiracy theorists because the feds, publicly released records have shown that the feds and the CIA actually do this stuff.
Yeah, my favorite thing is they didn't want Congress knowing what they were doing with Iran during the Contra. So they armed the Contra rebels. The whole Nicaragua thing. I woke up at 5 to design this episode, but eventually, basically, selling crack into predominantly Black neighborhoods in order to create a slush fund for Black ops during the Cold War. So whatever you think our government won't, and that's verified and undeniable. Whatever you think our government won't do, they've probably already done it. There's like MK Ultra, Tuskegee experiments, name it. Okay. So yeah, I guess.
So conspiracy theories are completely justified. I mean, whether or not they're true or not, it doesn't matter. Like, you cannot blame the public for not trusting the feds and then, jumping to conspiracy theories because it's not really theory anymore. It's just public record at this point. So is it beyond the realm of possibility that they targeted these 2 men who both served at Fort Bragg, One was a special forces guy, and the guy in New Orleans. They were at Fort Bragg. Is it possible that was an incubation spot for the feds to kind of push this
I
type
don't
of
know,
stuff on them?
dude. That could just be coincidence.
True, because a lot of people go to Fort Bragg. Yeah,
Fort Bragg is massive. I did extensive training at Fort Bragg.
Yeah, it's large, and a lot of people go there. It's not that big of a coincidence. So,
oh, by the way, it's called Fort Liberty now because Bragg was a racist piece of shit, but Trump wants to turn it back to Fort Bragg. Right now, it's Fort Liberty. Anyways, let's move on then to the second explosion, to the second attack, and then we'll tie it all together and what this is going to look like for 2025. Here we go.
Confirmed in just the last few minutes that he is an active duty U.S. Special Forces soldier assigned to 10th Special Forces Group, according to 4 U.S. officials, that he holds the rank of Master Sergeant, a senior enlisted rank, these officials said. 3 officials said he was on active duty serving in Germany, and he was on leave when this happened on New Year's Day. He has not been identified publicly, and authorities are still trying to work out whether this was a terrorist attack. Now, just to recap a little bit of what happened behind us just 24 hours ago, approximately, there are still police presence here around the valet area of where you pull into the Trump International Hotel just off of the Vegas Strip. This Cybertruck that he allegedly was rented from Colorado from the Turo rental platform. Authorities say that he drove it here to Las Vegas by 7:30 a.m. on New Year's Day, that he drove up and down the Strip, and then about an hour before the explosion drove past the Trump Hotel as well. And police did make note that the damage was really limited because of the body construction of this Tesla Cybertruck.
By the way, I love the Turo app. So I don't understand why that has to be mentioned. Okay, like Turo's awesome. You can save money instead of going to Enterprise or Hertz.
Yeah, and again, if they wanted to rent a car and have it be slightly more off the books, Turo is the option. It's a person-to-person private car rental app.
Plus, do you know what a pain in the ass it is to rent from Hertz and freaking Enterprise?
I just did it.
Oh God, I hate that process. They add on all these fees.
When I landed in LAX, it's better than it was, but Turo's still nice.
I love it. I love Turo.
It's less paperwork.
Keep using Turo, guys. It's it's going to the people.
It is going to the people. Okay, so yeah, I mean, look, if I'm going to play the anti-conspiracy corner, which I think responsibly we have to mention, it's that these were both disgruntled veterans. I know the Green Beret, he had a Bronze Star with a Valor device, multiple combat deployments, probably really effed up. And, it seems like he was making a statement in front of a Trump hotel inside an Elon Musk Cybertruck. Something that probably means something. And then when it comes to the New Orleans attacker, also clearly a very disturbed individual, also a veteran. And if you're going to do an attack, like a massive attack, doing it on New Year's makes sense. There are a lot of coincidences. Okay. There are a lot of coincidences. And I will mention one thing that is very sketchy to me, even if you're playing the anti-conspiracy corner. Where are the manifestos?
That's what I was about to talk about. If there was a manifestos, and if this was not like a false flag type of situation, most likely law enforcement would not publish it and probably just hide it because they wouldn't want it to be, they wouldn't want their agenda to be, aided and abetted, because that would encourage other people to do it. Well, which they might like, I don't know, but I think that
counterpoint.
Yeah, go ahead.
If we're gonna play out the manifesto thing, why would the feds publish Luigi Mangioni's manifesto, which was actually pretty succinct and well written, kind of confusing in terms of politics, but
I don't know.
Like that was damaging.
I don't have answers, dude.
Exactly.
Like I don't know how to make it. I don't know what to make of that. I don't know what to make of them publishing the manifesto. You would think that they wouldn't, but for this, this special forces sergeant who blew up the Tesla, I would think that he would have some type of manifesto to go along with the symbology of using the Cybertruck on the Trump Tower.
Exactly. And you would have expected a manifesto from the self-proclaimed radical jihadist guy,
Or
you
at
know?
least a video beforehand saying, "Hey,
Yeah,
this is why I'm
a
doing this."
martyr video. They if he was trying to be Islamic State and go on a suicide operation, where's the martyr video?
Yeah.
So it's just
Yep.
very odd. But there's just too much weird stuff, and it's too early in the investigation for me to be comfortable making any sort of supposition. So let's move on to what everyone can agree on. The state will definitely capitalize on this in the new year. And real quick, I just had to bring up that Trump made a blunder, because he generally does. He blamed Biden for the New Orleans attack, and is kind of setting himself up for failure. So, like, Trump pointed out to Biden's policies in the aftermath of the New Orleans terrorist attack, but the president-elect risks obviously facing similar criticism if an attack happens while he is in office. So, um, you know, Trump, so basically, he said New Orleans is unacceptable, inexcusable, and emblematic of a failing nation whose president ranks as the worst in history, according to President-elect Donald Trump. So, look, it's like this is gonna happen. These kind of things are now gonna happen. Okay, like things are only gonna get worse, and these attacks are these crazy events are only gonna happen with more frequency, and they're gonna happen under Trump. And he's going to be in the awkward rhetorical position now of looking weak because he called Biden out on it. And, it's just, look, blaming it on the open border policy, fine. Trying to, make it out as radical Islamic terrorism, and other forms of violent crime that will become so bad in America that will become hard to even imagine or believe. Look, all of his statements, there's no policy in it. It's just blaming, and he's setting himself up for failure. And the only policy that's really going to happen is we need more police, we need more border security, we need more AI surveillance. And so,
Yeah, that's my go-to conclusion about all this, regardless of whether it's a false flag or not. Like you said, consequentially, it's all the same. It is going to be used as an excuse to push down, Red Scare level surveillance and more Patriot Acts, quote unquote. Yeah, like including the deportation thing. Like, they're not going to be able to deport 11 million illegal immigrants. They're just not going to be able to do it. But what they will do is set up the infrastructure for deportation that is going to basically turn the United States into this spider's web of, heavy state surveillance and, bulldozing our civil rights when it comes to legalities. So, I mean, either way, the end result is the state needs to become more powerful and implementing more invasive technologies into our lives. That's what the end result is going to be, regardless of whether or not these were orchestrated by the government or whatever you want to say.
yeah.
The same result.
Yeah. And we've made that point enough. Now let's look at the invasive technology. So this is a pretty good take from independent journalist. I freaking in my show notes, I should have his name, but I'll post it in the description. So let's check it out. We are bringing Oracle back into it. We are bringing another important person that everybody should know about, just like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, Larry Ellison. All right, let's get into it.
A Tesla Cybertruck exploded in front of Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. And at 2:57 p.m. today, January 2nd, the Las Vegas Police Department revealed who the perpetrator was and ruled his manner of death a suicide. But what does the news say? Well, at 6:23 p.m. same day, January 2nd, CBS News is still reporting this as an investigation into a possible act of terrorism.
As a note now, this was from yesterday. No one's really calling it an act of terrorism anymore because he was a white dude. Apparently, he shot himself before, and then the car exploded. That's basically just semantics. but it really goes to show you that there is not a standard application of the definition of terrorism. We all know that. We all know that, but this one's really blatant because they're both car-based attacks that killed and injured civilians.
One actually involved in explosives and
like
incendiary
literally, since when isn't a car bomb a terrorist attack? Anyways, continuing.
Now, could those two things be true at the same time? Maybe they're just lazy with their reporting. Do they want it to be terrorism? Because one huge story that I somehow missed this year is that Paramount Global, which owns a ton of entertainment media properties, one of them being CBS News and all of their local news affiliates, well, they are now a de facto CIA mouthpiece.
Yeah, because, I think he mentions this. I only skimmed over this video, but yeah, Larry Ellison is early and deep contacts with the Central Intelligence Agency.
As of September 5th, 2024, Larry Ellison now controls Paramount Global. Larry Ellison, the mega billionaire founder of Oracle, will now be the majority shareholder of National Amusements, Inc., the company that controls Paramount Global. He will now own 77.5% of National Amusements through Pinnacle Media. And how is Ellison related to the CIA? Well, some people know this, but many people don't. But back in the 70s, Larry Ellison's first project was a CIA database codenamed Oracle. The CIA is the reason why Larry Ellison is a billionaire. He once wrote in the New York Times, quote, "The single greatest step we Americans could take to make life tougher for terrorists would be to ensure that all the information in myriad government databases was copied to a single comprehensive national security database."
He wrote that op-ed in the New York Times in 2002.
Yeah.
January 2002, it looks like. Oh, January 31st, 2002. So only a few months after September 11th.
Hold on, is this actually a good idea? Anybody remember what happened in Die Hard? Anyway, the database he's referring to is obviously Oracle, and they've been at this game for decades. But now with Paramount Global at his fingertips, it's a whole new ballgame. We all know that Operation Mockingbird never ended, but
we're going to talk about that in a second.
Now we have actual proof. They control the database, but also how the information is disseminated. In this case, they obviously want us to be afraid. Very afraid. Whitney Webb tweeted this today, quote, "Nothing makes Americans willing to surrender their remaining freedoms and civil liberties to the fused blob of Silicon Valley and the national security state like extreme anxiety and fear." Well, playbook activated, that's for sure.
Yeah, I love it. By the way, I love that creator. I encourage everybody to check him out. We should tag his handle in the video because he does amazing journalism and investigations. He finds niches that nobody else finds, and I love him for it.
Yeah, I forgot to put it in my show notes, so we'll have to do that after the show. So look,
yeah, good.
Operation Mockingbird. It's an alleged. I mean, it happened, but there's not a lot of proof. They never declassified it because a lot of people argue that it's still ongoing. Unlike COINTELPRO, which is also still going on, but
really?
Ended.
They corrected their behavior. They're cool now, Greg. What are you talking about? They learned their lesson.
All right. So Operation Mockingbird, a large-scale program of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency that began in the early years of the Cold War and attempted to manipulate domestic American news media organizations for propaganda purposes. And if you watch this channel, you'll be like, okay, you probably already believe that's actually happening. So according to author Deborah Davis, Operation Mockingbird recruited leading American journalists into a propaganda network and influenced the operations of front groups. The CIA-supported front groups exposed when an April 1967 Ramparts article, it was an old American political and literary magazine, reported that the National Student Association, a confederation of college and university student governments, received funding from the CIA. In 1975, the Church Committee, which was put together by the Senate Select Committee to investigate abuses by the CIA and even the IRS, the Church Committee revealed agency connections with journalists and civic groups. Most prominently the owner of the Washington Post. So this is really nothing new at all. And of course, journalists would definitely, a lot of careerist, notoriety oriented journalists have agreed to be part of this program. A, they get paid, and B, access
advances their career.
journalism. Yeah, access journalism. That's basically what the national security state functions off of. Access journalism or access reporting refers to journalism, often in interview form, which prioritizes access, meaning media time with important, rich, famous, powerful, or otherwise influential people in politics, culture, sports, and other areas over journalistic objectivity and or integrity. Access journalism in this context and clandestine operations also means access to deep background, uh, uh, off the record officials and within the CIA, within the State Department, within the presidential administration, politicians, political and intelligence operatives, etc. Access to them so you get the scoop, but then if you want to maintain access, you have to agree to the messaging that they want. So that's another aspect of access journalism with regards to something like COINTELPRO or Operation Mockingbird.
So the public is becoming increasingly aware of this manipulation in media by the government with Operation Mockingbird and such, and as well as like corporate agendas that push, profit margins for certain corporations in Wall Street. So I think the billion-dollar question is, now that the public is becoming more aware of these things, that essentially media is completely tainted by agenda, it's obviously led to the public distrust of the media, the mainstream media, right? That's good. That's a good thing. That's an obvious conclusion that the public would come up with, knowing these things. So what is going to be their new strategies going forward now that public distrust is growing amongst even liberals? And liberals are the first ones to say, okay, look, yeah, that Operation Mockingbird was a thing, but I'm sure that they corrected it. That's the liberal take on it.
They wouldn't do that now.
They wouldn't do that now. Look, I get it that war back then, but this war we need. The liberals are always the ones looking in retrospect and saying, yeah, that was a bad idea, but this one's cool. So
genocide's bad, y'all.
Yeah, but they'll say that 5 years later after everybody's like, So anyways, the new tactics, what is going to be their way of handling the distrust that the public has in government and media, and basically to the point where if we see something on the news, CNN or Fox or MSNBC or whatever, or the New York Times, we'll just be like, okay, well, if they're showing us this, that means they want us to see it, which means they have an agenda behind it. So the government has to figure out a way to work around that and come up with an updated plan. And I believe that the latest iteration of Operation Mockingbird is hijacking social media influencers, because everybody's going to social media for their news or going to independent journalism. So the obvious conclusion that the CIA would come up with is, okay, now we have to pay and co-opt independent journalism and social media influencers. Hence, during the election, we saw a bunch of normally objectively thinking individuals who are influencers suddenly coming out to endorse Trump or Kamala in a very...
Yeah. And the ones who endorsed Kamala, all of a sudden, overnight, after they went to the DNC, which I think was where most of them got recruited by cutout media organizations that were funded by the DNC, that's when they overnight stopped talking about Gaza and Palestine.
Yeah.
Huh.
So I guess my question to you, and this is something that you and I think we should reserve this rest of this episode to just kind of speculating. What's the new plan, and how do we defend against it? Like, what is the government corporate apparatus going to do about this distrust that we have in them? How are they going to curtail it? How are they going to mitigate it?
Well, we know what they're going to do.
Well, let's talk about it.
They're already losing control of the narrative on both sides.
So what do they do about it?
What every other fascist government does: more cops, send in the National Guard.
Yeah.
Surveillance state.
Force. They're just be like, all right,
Yes.
you know what? It's not working. You don't believe us. Fine. Fuck it. We're just going to like, we're going to crush you so hard that we'll make Stalin look like a hippie. So
Yeah, but
I
they won't need to go Bolshevik revolution with it, you know, or sorry, post. Yeah. Okay. Look, they won't need to go as hard as other authoritarian, whether you think that it's left or right, authoritarian, whatever. I don't care. They won't need to go as hard because Americans generally just want to be comfortable. So they'll take less and less and less as long as they don't have to do any sort of confrontation. We're so comfortable in this country, even though
bread and circus. That's going to be the new strategy.
Yeah, bread and circus. Also, like even though that America is like a violent, like a cesspool of violence, it doesn't touch most people.
Yeah, yeah, and
they're not gonna want to give up what they have to like fight for a collective goal. That's just not what we do here.
Plus, the economic strain that American families are going through is just stretched us so thin that we don't have time to worry about what the government's up to or how we're being screwed over.
There's also, and this is something that people need to understand going into it. We've already seen this. There's a nexus between military, police, political, and corporate power. And part of that corporate power is if you start saying the wrong things, like you want socialism or you want government or certain types of political reform that both the politicians and the corporations don't want, you can lose your job. Oh, wait, don't you need health insurance for your kids?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. I think you've nailed it. One of their most effective strategies that they've always used is just the fact that if you want to maintain your economic standing, like you're just pressured to go along with whatever, even if you don't like it. We saw now again, I guess the pro Pfizer bros out there are going to hate me for this, but we saw a hint of this during, the COVID period where you were threatened with losing your job if you didn't get the vaccine. And I'm not pushing anti-vax shit on here right now. I'm just saying that we know what it looks like when the government wants to really force something. They can just disseminate those orders down below into the private sector where people are getting hired and make it company policy. But I also want to talk about.
What? Wait, just one more point. It doesn't need. It's going to go both ways because yes, the president could ask a corporation to like do this, but like a lot of the time it's going to be corporations asking for the policies, and it's going to be corporations enforcing their own policies that will support certain political agendas that they like. So two-way street.
Yeah. And we're talking going back to Operation Mockingbird. There's an even like broader topic here is that you notice that it essentially shows that for all like the pro-capitalist out there is that the government, this unholy matrimony between corporation and government has created like a situation in which the winners are picked. We don't live in a free market. This is not a free market. People who are like pro-capitalist like to push this idea that, we need a free market. That's not a free market. In a free market, the government doesn't pick winners and losers. It does not seed an organization like Oracle, which obviously takes over the software sector by storm as one of the largest software companies in the world. That's not free market. That's capitalism. It's an unfair advantage that government and corporations have in this matrimony with each other that screws over smaller businesses. And I think that's even a bigger topic than Operation Mockingbird. Fuck Operation Mockingbird. It's the fact that we don't live in a free market where everybody can compete and everybody can have a business that can be successful. No, the government picks the winners. So for all the pro-capitalist Ben Shapiro's out there, this isn't free market. This isn't healthy. If government can pick winners and losers in the business, in the private sector, then you can throw all of your arguments for capitalism out the door because, if the government is seeding Oracle and it takes over the software market, where's the competition? It's the quote unquote competition that happens in capitalism. It's not there. So that's even a bigger topic in my opinion. Okay. What's the call to action then for the audience? How do we prepare for this McCarthyism that's coming down the pipeline that's going to be with government and corporations involved in this coordinated effort to subvert American liberties and freedom of press and getting the correct information and not being manipulated by false flags, by embellishing incidents like what happened in New Orleans. What do we do? What's the call to action here?
Well, first of all, it's going to be divide et impera, right? The messaging is going to try to divide people along racial, cultural, and ideological lines.
Right.
That's going to be number one. So just refuse to do that.
There you go. I like that. It's because it's so simple, but it's so needed. I don't think we can. I do not think we can repeat this enough to the audience. I do not think that we can overemphasize this point. Is that if we keep pushing the message, even to people who are not involved in this movement or any type of, class solidarity, if we push this message, stop being divided and stop letting these stupid culture war incidents and these offhand events that happen to divide us. And just getting people to recognize that it is us at the bottom versus the people at the top. If we can keep that message consistent, we can do our own fucking psyop of just pushing the message so fucking hard that people eventually adopt it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And also learn from Syria. That was not a good moment for the movement. We don't have enough time to get into it, and I don't want to get into it, but that was heavily divisive. Of course it would be. Better messaging. Second is we're about to become a surveillance. Well, we're already a surveillance state, but it's about to get a lot worse. So we're going to do an entire series on operational security and tech security. And we're going to be bringing people on to talk about like biotheft, and a bunch of other stuff. So we're kind of like getting near the end of our time. But yes, we're going to be doing practical stuff. The government will always be able to find you, but there are things you can do to mitigate your liability for what you're doing, whatever you choose to do in a country that's still nominally free.
I say we go back to the French resistance periods and start getting into low-tech methods of doing stuff, just getting the habit. But leaving it off in some good news, one thing that I found very entertaining, I'm sure you did too, in the past few weeks, was the fracturing that's going on in the Trump world between regarding the H-1B visa program, Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy versus America First crowd. It is beautiful to see this fracturing going on, and I think that it might wake maybe a few of them up to class solidarity and bring them over on our side. So we saw the fracturing in the Democratic Party and in the amongst the liberals. Now we're seeing the fracturing happening on the right, and I think it is beautiful, in my opinion. You're muted. I can't hear you. And you're muted, so unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry.
There you go. You're good.
That's a really unfortunate time to have a tech issue, but yeah, I think a lot of people are starting to. Two events have happened to wake people up on the right in terms of like they're not there to class consciousness yet. A lot of them aren't. It's the Ben Shapiro talking about the murder of Brian Thompson, the healthcare CEO, and he just got ratioed by his own people in the comments section.
Yep.
And the second is this Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, two billionaires. Trump's also a billionaire. Actually, most of his cabinet are billionaires. Basically beefing with Laura Loomer, who's a grassroots psycho, who's like really indicative, like is a thought and opinion leader of the MAGA first crowd, which is styles itself as very pro working class. We know that there's massive cognitive dissonance in that, but yeah, that's another event. So two things: CEO killing and beefing over visas for immigrants.
I hope that the end result of that whole H-1B visa thing is that suddenly the American First crowd is like, you know what? I prefer the immigrants from the South, from the southern border over these imports. And that way, maybe we can pull them over to being pro-immigrant. It could happen. I'm just saying.
What? Okay. Probably not in 2005. Okay, well, I think basically now that we're looking for a whole new year of endless forever wars. I mean, hell, they might even try to get this ISIS attack, this quote unquote ISIS attack, to try and manufacture consent to bomb Iran, even though ISIS pretty much only attacks Iran and its proxies. But like that's not gonna matter to a lot of Americans. So we're gonna be looking out for that. We're gonna be looking out for declining economic prospects, maybe a recession, enhanced police violence and drones and stuff, and hopefully solidarity.
Yeah.
So cool, guys. Well, we're glad to be back. We took a kind of like a light couple weeks over the holidays, but now we are going to be hitting it, and we hope to see you around.
Hope you guys have a great New Year. Let's make it count, man. Let's do some shit.
Yeah,
let's fuck some shit up.
Let's try to make
2028.
guillotines 2028. Let's go. All right, we will see you maybe Sunday. We might be doing something Sunday. We'll keep you updated and see you then. Cheers, y'all, and have a good weekend.
Peace out, guys.